Hey, welcome back to another episode of Venture Prince, a YouTube series where I dive into some of the cooler photos I've taken throughout my years. I've always been into photography ever since I was in high school. I took a class, graphic arts class, where I got to learn how to do a dark room, and so I've had some cool photos over the years. And I thought it would be fun this year, and a challenge to myself this year, to twice a week post a little video throughout the entire year that it corresponds with an Instagram post. And on the video, I just get into a little more of the detail and context of the photos, because that's something I'm always interested in when it comes to photos, including my own. When I take photos and I'm going through trips I've been on or this or that, I always really like thinking of exactly like where I was and when the photo was taken and what was happening around the photo. And I get as much enjoyment out of that, sometimes even more than the photo. So I thought this would be kind of fun. I don't know if I've ever mentioned yet, my dressing at points, but I'm kind of theme dressing today, wearing my University of Michigan hockey jersey, although it is an older style with the CCHA, as there's now been a Big Ten hockey uh, league for a while, and my Piston hat, because both those teams are kicking some butt this year, and I'm really enjoying that. So thank you guys so much for joining me in another episode of Venture Prince. So let's get into it. Let's Here we go, and I'll go right to the photo first so I can get the little details. So this photo was taken on Friday, January 14th of 2022 at 4:05 PM on Interstate 180 between the Grand Canyon National Park and Flagstaff, Arizona. So this one, and I have kind of been doing this on the episodes where I've been cycling between starting in 2020 when I went out to visit my brother, and then the 2022 traveler cross country comedy trip I did. So I'm kind of flipping back and forth between the different episodes, and at some point they will merge a little more. But this was on our in the first few weeks of our trip, where I drove around the country trying to do comedy, open mic comedy in all 50 states. And so, give a little more context here to the photo, we can go into what I've been liking to do recently, is these screenshots to give more of more, like I said, just more context to where it was taken. So you can see here's Flagstaff down here. There's the Grand Canyon up there. Knowing me, I probably zoom in a little on one of these things, and I did not this time, which is shocking. So I'm going to back it up. I'm shocked I didn't do that. So Grand Canyon National Park up here. We were staying at Flagstaff down in the lower part there, and you can see somewhere where I've taken some photos. In fact, I used one of the photos in Flagstaff when I stayed at the Super 8. So there's the I-80, Grand Canyon. And that was a this was it was funny, early on in the trip, we were way more willing to do these excursions. This was, a few hour drive out to the Grand Canyon and a few hour back. By the end, I would never have driven that far out, but I'm glad I did, because I've never seen the Grand Canyon before. So that was really very awe-inspiring. Everyone's gonna have their opinion, and so if you look, that's about where that photo was taken. So, everyone's gonna have their opinion, of course, when it comes to, the Grand Canyon. I super enjoyed it. I thought it was very emotional. I couldn't even grasp the size of the Grand Canyon, and it just was very awe-inspiring to me. I know for some people, it's just a big hole in the ground, I get it, but for me, it seemed a little cooler than that. And so that was very fun, and I'm glad we did it, but like I said, that was early in the trip. Once we got later, next month or so, like, we were not driving 2 hours out of our that's not totally true, because at one point I drove 3 hours down to Orlando to watch a wrestling show, and then 3 hours back, and there was no reason to do that. So that's not totally true, but we started doing less and less of it. So here we get into the photo, and it's kind of it is a somewhat basic photo, but I've already said this in the past episodes, so you'll see it. There's a pattern. I like roads. I really enjoy empty roads, especially when the center lane is kind of in the middle shot. You got the trees on the left and right, which is really cool. And then you lead into this mountain, to me, with the snow capped. So that's something I super enjoy about this. It almost looks like one of those 80s video games where you're going to be driving and driving and you're never actually going to get to the mountain. But in real life, you do get to the mountain. So that's kind of fun. But like, that's why I like this. Um, I don't know that I would have been driving while I take these photos. I have driven while I've taken photos before. I don't know if I was driving this time. I might have been taking a break, to be honest with you, because that was such a long drive there and back. So I might have let one of the guys drive. But it's kind of simplistic in a lot of ways, and I don't have as much background to give in this image what I was thinking, but I know generally I was thinking that it looks like one of those video games from the 80s where you're racing to the mountain, but you never actually get there. I do love that there's 0 cars in a road. If I take photos like this, I always try to make sure there are no cars on the road. That's just my thing, and I got lucky that the lines all really frame it well in the photos, and there's not very many clouds in the sky. There is a little bit of haze above the mountain, but not too much. And so, yeah, as far as this one, my biggest takeaway, I remember just this drive to Grand Canyon was, really, it was long. It was a long day for all of us, but it was fun. So there we go again. And for context, it was taken on Friday, January 14th, 4:05 p.m. on the 180 between Grand Canyon National Park and Flagstaff. So I think there you go. I think so much people are starting to watch a little more of these episodes. I appreciate it. The numbers are going up a little. We've even got a few subscribers. Thank you so much for that. Please, if you're liking it, feel free to share it and let your friends know about it. I'm certainly also do a podcast, speaking of this comedy trip, called the Venture Cast, which you can find on Spotify and iTunes, which talks about my time traveling around the country doing the comedy, also my time up on Mackinac Island, working with horses and living on a touristy island that has no cars, just bikes and horses. And there's hundreds of videos about both those subjects on my Patreon page, eVentureCast Patreon page. The podcast I do several free seasons. There are now some Patreon exclusive episodes, but if you have never listened to an episode and check out eVentureCast on Spotify or iTunes, there's plenty of free episodes. I'd suggest the season where I travel around the country, and I'd suggest season 2 of my time in Mackinac Island. I thought my season 2 was the best season. I'm also on Instagram at eVentureCast. So any of those things, all these photos, of course, are for purchase. If anyone's interested, and I love comments, so please feel free to comment on what you think about the photos, the episodes, or even just the idea of what I'm doing. If you think that this is a cool concept, or if you think it's a dumb concept, that's fine too. I don't mind. I've done broadcasting and entertainment almost my whole adult life, so I have pretty thick skin, and I can take the criticism. So I think that ought to do it for this week. I say this week's, but I do 2 episodes a week. But this episode of Venture Prince, super appreciate everyone that's checking this out, and hope that it can continue to grow, and hope that people continue to enjoy it. Okay, so that's it. I will see you next episode of Venture Prince.